Rod, we tell a lot of stories about big things, especially like the one a couple of weeks ago about, the Kirkland bushwhackers.
Mhm.
And then again, we do some very small stories,
Mhm.
local stories. And this week is one of those weeks we do a local story, isn't it?
Yes, it is. This is one of those chances we get to highlight someone or an event or something like that. I don't know. I would call it almost in a way revolutionary, almost in
Hmm.
one way about this person we're going to talk about because they were. Well, I guess the best word to describe it would be a daredevil almost, just a daredevil altogether. So,
Yeah. And this guy's kind of up in your neck of the woods,
right.
Dickinson County and Wise County, pound to Clintwood, because that's where he ran
Hmm.
back about 100 years ago.
Yeah, something
Uh,
in that neighborhood about 100 years ago. Oh, and we need to add too now, not
mhm.
just Pound and Clintwood, but also into southeast Kentucky and
Right.
also probably up into West Virginia and into southern Ohio. This man became well known, but we'll explain that here in a few minutes.
Okay. Well, the fellow we're talking about is a man named Ray Vaughn Shores. Vaughn is what his birth certificate says. Although everybody up there knows him as just plain Vaughn Shores with a VON.
VON or VONN, I've seen it before, but just
Mhm.
VON is what I've known him as. So,
And he had a real Appalachian beginning. You know, we're not really doing video, so we can't show you his mother's picture, but it's a very well known picture that I think you told me was on a mural in the town of Pound.
yes, it is. It's on the side of the building as you're going down Pound, moving from the downtown part to uptown Pound is what they refer to it. There is a building there that used to be I think a store, parts place, or something like that.
Mhm.
And on the side of the building, it has Granny Shores, and Granny Shores is there, and she's without any other way to describe it, kind of a crumpled up old woman look, and she's smoking a pipe. And
Sitting in a
it's kind
rocking
of,
chair,
yeah,
right?
sitting in a rocking chair, and she's kind of, she's there, and she's just, it's you're taking that picture in, and you're looking at her, and you're just saying, oh, this is a kind of a typical old woman, maybe from Appalachia, but she was much more than just a typical old woman. She was flourishing midwife, is what she did. She delivered
Yeah.
babies and a number of babies at the same time.
And she was also married to a doctor
Hmm.
as well. So, Von Shores had quite the ancestry behind him. And I guess one thing I'd say is, I wonder if she criticized the midwife that delivered her child,
Oh, who knows?
or
Who
critiqued
knows?
him at least.
Critiqued, I don't know. I mean, I can kind of share in there, and I don't know what it is, but it seems like that in here in Appalachia, there are families who, if they had a midwife in there, it's like the family tries to go, and I'm saying this in one way facetiously, but it's almost as if they want their midwife mother to top all the others that are out there because I had a great aunt that was a midwife, and it's been said that she delivered 15 to 1800 babies, maybe even close to 2000. I have no
Wow.
idea. Don't know what the number is, but now Granny Shores delivered quite a few, and her payment plan was very unique. As with my great aunt, it was she came and stayed for maybe 3, 4 weeks, even prior to or after the birth of the child, helping with cleaning up the house, helping the wife do things about learning how to do things with the baby. Now, as for Granny Shores, I'm not too sure about it, but her payment was, or I should say, my great aunt's payment was pretty much a chicken or something that they could swap out. For Granny Shores, it was a chicken or something like that and a bottle of whiskey or both. That's what it ended up being. She was pretty adamant about what she would get paid when she went in to do midwifery.
Okay. Well, that's a good intro. So let's get into who we're really talking about. That's
Right.
her son, Vaughn Shores. And Vaughn Shores, gained his fame by being an aviator back in the 1920s and 1930s over there in Southwest Virginia, Eastern Kentucky. In fact, I think you told me at one point that he had like an unofficial runway in what's now downtown Clintwood.
Yes, it was.
Am I right?
Yeah, I said this one time to the ladies at the Dickinson County Historical Society, and they thought they were going to have to get ready and call Marion to have me committed, because I told them, I said, I said, did you know that Clintwood had an airport at one time? And they said, you're crazy. You don't know what you're talking about. And I said, well, let me just tell you the story here. Vaughn Shores flew in a Curtis Jenny plane at the time, because I have a picture and I'm trying to retouch it of getting the quality a little bit better. But Vaughn Shores is standing there with my great aunt, Pearl Sutherland, who was a proprietor of a Sinclair station, where now a Scotchman gas station exists, right pretty much in the center of town, across from where the old Dickinson Memorial High School used to be. And when she would hear the plane buzzing, the sound going over, she usually was very keen on hearing. And what she did was she either told my uncle, who's deceased now, or another boy that might have been working there in the garage, to go and take a couple of tires from the back of the building and pour some oil on them and set fire to them. Now, the big question was why? Well, it was in order for Vaughn Shores to be able to get the airspeed, wind speed, know what direction the wind was flowing and so forth, till he could land and come down what we refer to now as Dickinson Highway on Route 83. It goes through Clintwood and on toward Hayside. He would land and come down through there, and then land, stop the plane, and then he would, mingle, do some things. He'd say hello, and maybe, I don't know, maybe get a bottle of Coke and maybe some nabs, and then take off and fly again. But he also did this for the fun of flying people around too. I think it was like $1, maybe a flight or something. And I think he took my Aunt Pearl up in a plane, and she talked about it an awful lot.
Yeah, wow, that's pretty cool, to be honest with you. About where was this runway? Do you remember?
The runway pretty much exists where the roundabout is in Clintwood now. That's,
Okay.
generally where he would land, circle around, taxi around, and then he would go and he would take back off. And that would be to the right. If you're coming into Clintwood, he would kind of veer down the street going toward the Hayside Road, taking 83, and then he would take off. He would land coming in from that, and then slow down or take back off, and he would, one way or the other, he would get her airborne, and he would get that plane airborne. But Steve, there's much more to Vaughn Shores, even though we're talking about him being such a renowned aviator. We need to fill you in on some other things. He was involved in some, how can we say this, trafficking, so to speak, of certain things across state lines, and maybe even during the time of Prohibition.
Well, now that's not official, understand.
Okay.
I've looked in newspaper articles and never found anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that, well, the old fashioned way that fellers used to pass history on was to just tell stories, kind of like we're doing right now.
Yeah.
And I understand that you've heard a few stories, and this is kind of where you're getting this information from. Is that right?
Yeah. And I'm going to tell you where the source came from. The source came from actually two people. One was famed football coach Ralph Cummins, and Ralph Cummins was telling me in my history class, and I had never met my wife at that point. I was a junior in high school, and I had no idea that there was a Kim Marshall out there in the world. And he started talking about this man known as Cooge Branham, George Cuthbert Branham, but everybody knew him as Cooge. And we've talked a little bit, I think, on maybe a podcast or two about Cooge having stills over in south of the mountain, one known as Kansas City, the other known as Salt Lake City. And they were about the only thing that would be lit up at night. And Cooge had to have a way of getting his liquor out and getting it to people, not just selling it like they had been doing. And some way, somehow, Coach Cummins at that time had linked it up, or had been told at one point or another that he had kind of developed an association, Cooge had, or at least through connections, with Al Capone.
Oh,
And Cooge Branham was sending his liquor out by air with Vaughn Shores, and Vaughn Shores was flying and taking off, maybe picking up some others here and there, but they would make stops in southeastern Kentucky. Sometimes he would fly up as far north as the southern end of Cincinnati, and he would make his drops, and then he'd fly back. And along the line, if he needed a little bit of money, he would fly back, and then he would do aerial stunts is what he would do. And the second person who confirmed that he was hauling moonshine or illegal liquor and whiskey at that time was Kim's grandfather, my wife's grandfather, who said that at one time he landed in Pound Bottom, which is pretty close. It's across the river right now, but it was all farmland at one time. And he hit a hole. And when he did, the plane hit the hole, flipped, went upside down, and he climbed out and then just got back out and flipped the plane back down and fixed what he needed to and so forth. And he took off. But it was said that he had enough liquor on board that plane that if a fire or something had happened, it would have been like an atomic bomb going off in Pound Bottom.
wow. Wow. You know, I've done some research on this. And as I said, there's very little in the way of actual news. In fact, I've been looking at this thing for a couple of years now,
Mm-hmm.
and finally did end up getting a few bits of information that, with what you know,
Mm-hmm.
is allowing us to do this little episode here. One of the things that I found that I hadn't found before is a newspaper article, um, and I don't remember what year it was, but I think 1927, I think 28,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. He was appearing as an aviator in an air show at the Wise Fairgrounds that year,
Mm-hmm.
and he had met a young lady who was part of the traveling carnival that came through at that
Mm-hmm.
time. And apparently, he had invited her to go up in his airplane. And so they did. And so I don't have my glasses, but see if I can read this here. Um, the plane was just outside the Wise Fairgrounds. And hang on here, and I'll put my glasses back on so I can really read this. So let me read this here to you.
Okay.
An airplane piloted by Vaughn Shores, intrepid young aviator from Pound, went into a tailspin today at 12 o'clock and fell to the ground with crushing force, gravely injuring both the pilot and a young woman passenger whose name could not be learned. The plane fell just outside the Wise Fairgrounds and was reduced to a tangled mess. The two ended up being injured and they were rushed to the hospital. I think in the end, she broke her wrist and her leg, and he had some lacerations and bruising around his head and around one of his legs. And I think the thing that really got to me in this is that it said that she reached for the throttle and pulled it and caused the plane to go into a tailspin. So, this is what you get for finding a pretty young lady and going joyriding with her,
I'm not going to say anything else to that one, Steve. That one, I have to say that wouldn't surprise me at all. It's kind of one of those things of, almost like almost Twilight Zone-esque of somebody bragging, look at what a great pilot I am. And look how, I've
Yeah.
handled this plane and everything. Let me show you how it's done. So, yeah. Mm.
Well, and there was another incident that I came across, and I'll let you talk about this one, involving a shooting at a little diner in Pound, Virginia.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ed's Cafe, if I'm not mistaken. They were there, and they were, I think it was Vaughn Shores and several other gentlemen, I think, that were kind of standing around, and someone shot at them, or at least shot at the place of business, but it's pretty much convinced that, they were being shot at. And the man eventually, after they caught him, they found out his name was, I think, Guilford Branham. Now,
Mm-hmm.
done some research and checked some things. No relation, as far as I know, to Cooch Branham, but he must have, I don't know, he must have had a sore spot somewhere for something maybe that Vaughn had done at one time or another to him. But, still, he took a shot at him, and, they escaped, any kind of major injury out of it. But still, those were some wild and rollicky times back in those days.
They were. He also got into going around and showing some of his pictures to students at local schools.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one where he had this exhibit of the photographs he took. And I think one of the pictures he took was a picture of the brand new Norris Dam
Mm-hmm.
in Tennessee, and pictures of Pikeville and pictures of Clintwood, all taken from the air, which at that time was a real novelty.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't say so, but I would assume that these pictures were part of something that had to do with the New Deal and the things that they were doing to
Mm-hmm.
help out people that needed some help financially, and also get things that normally you wouldn't get, like these aerial photographs for people.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like, historical research, I suppose.
Right.
But yeah, I thought that was pretty nice. But he didn't stay up here too long.
Mm-mm.
After that. I think eventually he moved to the Roanoke area,
Mm-hmm.
and then from there he moved down to Florida.
Right.
And in Florida, you've heard one story. The story I've gotten is that he became an aviation technician
Mm-hmm.
for a local Air Force base. But you said that you thought that he had gone down there to actually train people to fly during World War II. Is that right?
That's one thing that's been told, and I haven't found anything concrete on it, but it was just mentioned. And I think probably a lot of this has to do with the fact that, here Vaughn Shores was, and he kind of left the area, and, you thought he hit it big, with something like that,
Mm-hmm.
leaving the area at that time. And, there he was, he goes to Florida, and supposedly he had been signed on to train pilots is what he was. But after reading some of the articles that you'd provided me and all, looking at it, he was pretty much an aviation, like you said, an aviation mechanic, a technician working on the planes. And then, of course, by about the mid 50s, I think, is when it happened. He met an unfortunate demise there. I think,
Yep.
what was that near? Palatka, Florida, I believe is where it was at.
It was, and they had a news article about that, said that his body was found floating in the Intercoastal Waterway
Mm-hmm.
south of, I think, High Bridge at 1:45 yesterday afternoon. This would have been, I think, August the 10th of 1955. Turns out that he and his wife and his 13-year-old son, I think he was
Yeah.
13,
Son, yeah.
decided to go on a camping trip on an island, and they had a boat. So they go on out there in that boat, and something happened that caused the boat to sink.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the wife and the son managed to get through the swamps and get back to help.
Mm-hmm.
But he and another man who were on that boat both unfortunately drowned. And it was a big tragedy, but
Mm-hmm.
luckily his family was safe after that was done.
Yeah. That kind of was a very unfortunate demise for him, because you would have thought from him flying and his ability to be able to fly and so forth, that it was almost like you look at him and you think, Vaughn Shores is like 10 feet tall and bulletproof.
Yeah.
Nobody can touch him out of this. But, a simple, camping, or at least an excursion in Florida, that's what it led to. And by the way, I mentioned to you about Palatka, Florida.
Mhm.
Here's a little bit of trivia for you. Name the national rag newspaper at one time that was based in Palatka, Florida.
Was that the National Enquirer?
You are correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
I know my Enquirer, Rod.
Well, and I think Weekly World News moved there too after the Enquirer shut down. So,
Bat Boy. I forgot about him.
Yeah, Bat Boy. Yeah, those strange ones. This story about Vaughn Shores is just, it's in and of itself, it's almost like a legend inside of a legend. And, he was flying about the same time that we had talked about John Paul Riddle on one of our podcasts. They were flying about the same time. And most of them, what they did back in those days, in order to fly, they bought the old, what was left over of the surplus of Curtis Jenny planes from World War One. But you said, or I believe you said this, or I understood you to say it. Wasn't there a picture somewhere of a nice, shiny, new airplane that he was featuring, or he had been flying around at different kind of festivals and events?
I don't know, it wasn't a picture. There was a news article about the
Okay.
Dickinson County Fair.
Oh, okay, then that's it.
And this I think was in 1925,
Hmm.
24, 25. And I'll quote, it says, chief among the attractions there at the fair that year,
Hmm.
uh, presenting midway announcements, various and unusual acts. And also, Vaughn Shores of Wise makes daily flights in his brand new Lockheed airplane.
Wow.
So he either had a rich relative,
Hmm.
or maybe you're right about running all that whiskey back then, about that time.
It may have been, but now, I first thought, though, when I heard that story, I thought that was a bunch of malarkey. And I hate to say that, but being a junior in high school, you kind of feel like, you know it all anyway. But
Yeah.
then when I met my wife and then started talking to her and I found out who Cooge Branham was, then the story started coming out and I started finding out more about him. And then my mom had obtained a picture or two of my Aunt Pearl there standing in front of that Curtis Jenny plane that he had at one time. And like I said, she had been taken up on some flights. And I think it was my grandfather also who had also flown with him. And I think maybe his sister too, Aunt Ollie. I think she also flew. So there was a variety of the family involved with it, and they just got that thrill out of being able to fly. But yeah, I still think back, and you tell people about Clintwood having an airport, and it was set up
Yeah.
primarily by Pearl Sutherland, and at that time, and then Vaughn Shores flying in and out of Clintwood on a semi-regular basis, and then all the things he was involved in. It's a pretty unique story.
Oh, it is indeed. And you know, want to apologize to those of you who are listening to us who expect, like we do every week, to just come up with a big, well thought out script and all this. A lot of this is just off the top of our heads
Hmm.
and with what little information we got. And we hope you enjoyed it. And yeah, Rod, it is a very fascinating story. And it is another one of the stories of Appalachia. Thank you all so much for listening. Now, be sure to subscribe to the podcast if you don't mind. And if you haven't done so already, you'll find us on your favorite podcast app. Till next we meet, y'all take care. So long, everybody.
So long.